Hi, my name is Susan Magnano, and I'm a photographer, light painter, and educator. Welcome to my city, and really my backyard, Central Park. We are in New York City, the city that never sleeps and never really turns off its lights. So it may seem daunting to go out and want to do light painting here. But trust me, with my guidance and some experimenting, you'll get the hang of it and have a blast. With long exposures and some light tools, you have the chance to do something different and add your artistic voice. Today, we're going to be doing light drawing, where we incorporate light directly into our images. We're going to be using light tools in front of our camera to create unique patterns and shapes. We will also dive into light painting portraits, which is my favorite type of photography, because it gets me involved in not only capturing the environment, but telling a story and adding the human element. We will be reviewing the light tools that I use and the techniques that I use in my luminescent portrait series, which is my light painting portrait series. So let's get started. How do you light paint when there's so much ambient light? Since it's so much brighter here, we're going to compensate by shooting at a lower ISO and closing down our aperture so that we can allow for a longer shutter speed. Because we are making our camera less sensitive to light, the lights that we're adding, like our flashlights and our light tools, will need to be brighter than the ambient to register in the exposure. But let's say your light tool is at its brightest setting and it's still dim in your picture. You can try moving it slower so it'll burn into your exposure more. The gear I brought with me today is the Olympus OM1, my Nikkor flashlights, my Benro tripod, my Godox speedlight, of course my light tubes and my fiber optic brushes, and so many more fun tools to check out and play with. If you want to learn more about the tools I use, then check out our gear episode. So this is the fun part. Now we're going to be talking about light painting techniques and patterns. So our first tool we're going to be showcasing is a T8 tube. So a T8 tube is basically a hollow tube where you would put a fluorescent light in. It's a light guard. And Eric Perret and Kim Henry were the founders of doing this type of photography, where they stuck a flashlight in this and gave it a new life. So today we're going to be showing you some tricks with it. So we have this Nikkor flashlight right here, and we're going to stick it in the tube like this. It's really helpful if you have a tube with a pen clip on it, so the light doesn't go all the way through. So a light with the pen clip in it. And then the technique to do a circle, which is one of the most simplest patterns, is to put your hand out straight, put your thumb facing down, just like this, and you're going to think about your hand as the center of a circle. And you're going to spin it like this, and you always want your hand to be at the same position. An important tip is to start behind, if you're shooting with a model, start behind one of their legs, because there's always that moment where the light is on that second a little bit longer, so you don't want it to be brighter than the whole rest of the circle, and then to end behind their other leg, so you don't have that double exposure. Another really cool pattern that I like to do is called a windshield wiper, and it looks like just how you imagine it to look. So it's just kind of this back and forth motion. And the cool thing about it is you can start up high and work your way down, or you can move right and left. So you can start this way, or you can start this way. And what I typically do is I'll start from one direction, I'll make a circle, and then I'll go out the other way. And what's cool about that is you add symmetry to your pictures. And I think that really makes your pictures look awesome. Another really cool technique to do with your light painting is to make it three-dimensional. So not only do we have to move left and right, but now we can move forward and back. And when I do this, I typically start from behind the camera. And I do a technique that I like to call the vacuum. And basically I start from behind the camera, and I do this kind of vacuuming technique. And then I'll walk around. Typically I have a model. Around my model, I'll do the circle again, and then I'll come back this way and I'll go behind the camera. And that technique is so cool because it adds that extra three-dimensional look. So another great tool I use for light painting is the speedlight. This little flash is so handy. Typically wedding photographers will keep this on the stand, or portrait photographers will keep it at a distance, but I typically like to get in there and use it handheld. And the way I do that is I put it in manual mode, and I typically start at 1/8 power. And once I do a test, I'll basically go at a 45-degree angle from my model, and I'll hit this little red button, and it triggers the flash. Another technique I like to use with the flash is stadium lighting. And this is just a technique I like to do where I fire the flash a lot. And I make sure I'm firing it from behind, because if I fire the flash a lot on my model's face, if she moves a little bit, we could get that double exposure monster look, and that's typically not my style. So basically I'll do a 45-degree angle, and then I'll go behind her and I'll kind of do a rapid fire flash, 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 flash. And sometimes it looks like lightning bugs, sometimes it looks like stadium lights, and it's like magical. So I recommend trying out that really cool effect when you're using your speed light or flash. So this is a homemade light blade, and it's made out of plexiglass, and it's made with some plumbing part that I cut the plexiglass and fit into and added some hot glue. And when I say I did this, my brother did this. So thank you to my brother. He's my light painting tool engineer. And I'm using this really handy tool from lightpaintingbrushes.com. It's called the Universal Adapter. And what it does is it kind of fits into all these cool plumbing parts and all their light painting brushes tools. So it's a great rubber adapter that fits most light painting tools and also most flashlights. So what's cool about the blade is that it creates this really cool opaque look, and you can do like all sorts of samurai moves, which are really fun, like this, and you can really get artistic with it. Woo! So I'm not a very good hula hooper, but I'm a pretty good light painter. So this light painting tool is probably one of the funnest. I mean, it may be annoying to carry around, and people do give me quite a few stares, but it's definitely the most interesting to use. And I'm typically not using it like that. The way I'm typically using it is I'm creating these interesting patterns just by doing these interesting swooping moves, and it's just really fun. This is my signature tool, and all it is a black fiber optic with a red gel and this universal adapter. And this you can all find at lightpaintingbrushes.com. It's part of their deluxe starter kit, and it's rad. I totally recommend checking it out. And you can see that the tips are starting to light up. And when you shake it like this, and because it's red, it looks like fire. And I love doing this around some of my superhero looks or any of my couples that are red hot, fiery lovers. I hope tonight we have the opportunity to do it. One of the main ingredients to do this is you need a darker background, because the fire is very faint, and if it's too washed out, it really won't show up. So we have gone through how to scout for the perfect location, what gear to use, and even light painting techniques. I like to get set up during sunset because I still like to photograph sunset even though I'm a light painter. But also it's because I want to be ready for that blue hour. Blue hour is my favorite time to shoot, and it moves super quick. The light is constantly changing and you have to be ready. So I think all we have to do now is wait for it to get a little bit darker. We have found the perfect location. I am standing here overlooking the Manhattan skyline. My wonderful model, Kimberly Dawn, a Broadway performer, is standing by, ready to be photographed. And what I love about this spot is that we have this gorgeous skyline, but also we don't have a lot of ambient light. So this is gonna be perfect. So if I look at this scenario, I can tell that I can light paint from that rock to that rock, but it's easy to get confused. So what I'm gonna try and do is I'm gonna try and put either a rock or a pebble or something that's gonna stand out, maybe even a leaf on that location, so I can make sure I distinguish that is the end of the framing for the camera. So you guys may be wondering what this is. This is an Adamus Ninja, which is gonna help you guys see my camera creating a live comp in real time as I do my light painting. So it's finally blue hour. So let's get shooting. Let's talk about the settings I'm using. I'm gonna start off by doing 100 ISO, and let's start off with f16 and see how long our exposure can be. So by doing that, it is saying that for a proper exposure, I could do up to 30 seconds. That's a little bit long, so I don't need it to be that. So I'm gonna go, let's say I wanna do a 10-second exposure. That would be f9, because they kind of work like, remember the exposure triangle? As you let more light in with the longer exposure, you need to balance it by closing down the aperture to get that proper exposure. But one thing I've learned is when you're doing night photography, you don't necessarily want it to be a proper exposure, because then it could look like daylight, and you actually want it to be a little bit underexposed. So we're gonna underexpose it by stop, and we're gonna do that by stopping down the f-stop. So we are now at f11 and 8 seconds. Next, I want to talk to you about focusing. So I've already pre-focused during the day, and I was able to pre-focus on the rock and know that's where I'm going to be standing to do the light painting. So I've put it in manual mode and we're all set. So I have my remote trigger ready and I'm going to trigger it when I'm in front. And my first light painting motion I'm going to do to really test out this brightness and make sure it's the proper brightness is a circle. So if you remember correctly, you stick your arm out straight and you turn the flashlight like this. And another tip I forgot to mention is if you're doing it behind a model, you turn your feet to the side so they're not seen as much. So let's try it. All right, ready, firing. Let's take a look. Awesome, that's a good first circle. The balance of the light is bright, but good enough, and we see the city behind it. I'm now gonna put my camera into live comp mode because I wanna show you guys how it builds. So let's do that. So what this is saying is that my base exposure for the live comp mode is gonna be 10 seconds, which is the same as what I was shooting a minute ago with the regular exposure mode in manual. All right, I think we're ready. I'm gonna get my model, Kimberly Dawn, if you don't mind. And I'm gonna shine my flashlight on her so I can see the proper focus. She looks wonderful. So we have locked in her focus. I have her all ready. We've done a test exposure. Let's do another test exposure. What I'm gonna tell her right away is that you're gonna have to stay still for 10 seconds. And I'm gonna count it down. So the camera is open. I'm gonna start my light painting. Great. And I'm gonna close the camera. Great, and I'm gonna come check it out. Relax, and you're gonna always tell your model to relax. Beautiful. So as you can see here, I actually didn't realize this, but the camera is in a slight strobe mode. But you can see that's why we got those awesome little lines. We got a perfect silhouette around her. The city is starting to look dark, so we're gonna have to expose for that. Because like I said, blue hour is really tricky. The lighting is constantly changing and you have to keep on changing. So once it gets to that New York City darkness level, we'll be fine and we won't have to make so many changes, but I think we're hitting that point. So I think she looks good, the silhouette is good, but let's see if we could expose better for the city because the city is the second star of this picture besides our Broadway starlet over here. So the way we could allow more light into this camera is we can do a longer shutter speed, or we can open up the aperture, or we can make the ISO a little bit higher. So I think I'm okay with doing a longer shutter speed. I'm gonna check focus. She looks perfect. I think it's ready to go. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay. We've started our base exposure and let's shoot. We're gonna start from the windshield wiper, windshield wiper, windshield wiper, circle, and then windshield wiper, windshield wiper. Dawn has to stay still until I close the shutter because we don't want her to be blurry. And I just closed the shutter. But that is looking stellar. So I think that's looking really cool. So what I'm noticing is though, that my light painting has taken over the scene. We no longer see New York City, which I don't want to happen because this is the city I love. So I realized I cannot go so high with my light painting. I want to keep it a little bit lower. So now that we've mastered silhouettes, let's add a bit of flash. And also let's change up the tubes. So we have our speed light here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna light my model from a 45-degree angle to her face, and wherever her face is pointing. I'm gonna try and light her in. Let's see which way are you gonna pose? Like, if she's posing this way, wherever her nose is facing is where I'm gonna be flashing her from. So let's see. If you could point your face back this way, that would be amazing. Just like that. Do you see that beautiful pose? So I'm gonna make sure I light her from this side because I want to be lighting her from where her nose is facing. So perfect. And then I have this new tube that is this beautiful translucent type color. It is almost like rainbow light. So we'll see what this is like. So we're gonna switch it up a bit. First thing I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna add a pop of flash. So let's do the flash and then let's add the tube afterwards. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm gonna come over here. I've done a 1/8 power flash. Okay, got the flash, great. And then I'm gonna come back here and I'm gonna do the tube. Perfect, great. So now we did that, let's stop our trigger. Great. Let's see what that looked like. Oh my God, awesome. So I was able to get the perfect amount of light on her face, perfect exposure, and I really like the way the shadow is hitting her face. It's gorgeous. So the next shot we're gonna be doing is the vacuum into the circle. The coolest part about this is that I'm actually gonna start from behind the camera. This is how we make it a three-dimensional picture. So remember, the vacuum cleaner starts from behind the camera. And ready, going now. Doing the vacuum cleaner. Gonna actually turn the light away from the model when I turn around. Now I'm gonna turn it back in front. Perfect. Great. I think that looked awesome. Okay, stay still. Gonna come in with the flash. Great. And then I'm gonna come in nice and low. And again, it's all about these movements. Light painting is always about these cool movements and incorporating light and motion and creativity. Like, I truly feel like a light painter right now. And it's so much fun. All right, so the cool thing about the live comp feature is that I can come back and see if I want to add anything mid-exposure. This is wild, guys. And I realized I kind of want to add a little bit of something in front. So I did. Let's go back, take a look. Yes! So we've changed locations. Now we're shooting a little bit closer to our subject. I put on a wider lens, a 16-35 equivalent, and I want my subject to appear like she's larger than life and the city is behind her. So she's also going to be summoning the fire. So I have this really cool light tool. It is a black fiber optic and I have a red gel on it. So when I move this very quickly, it gives the illusion of fire. So I'm hoping we can make it look like she's summoning fire. So let's get started. All right, ready? Summon the fire. Awesome. We're also going to be flashing her. Great. And ready, firing away. About to get started. Going now. And here comes the fire. Ooh. First, we're going to start off with the fire at her feet and coming up her body. This probably tickles. And we're going to make sure we get it in her hands. But first, we're going to have it coming down her body and on the ground, all over the ground. Great. Awesome. And then I'm going to turn it off, and then I'm going to put it right in her hand and give the illusion that she's holding it. Perfect. Then we're going to come over here and we're going to stop it. Oh my God, relax. That looks awesome. Ready, Kimberly? Perfect. So let's get started. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Great. And then I'm gonna do the hula hoop. So let's bring it out. Whee! Whee! Oops, fell down a hole. Oh no. Okay, we're gonna come back around here. Stay still. Great. I'm gonna go grab the flash because I dropped it, and I'm gonna do some stadium lighting. Okay. Kind of wanna come right behind the umbrella. We're gonna take a look at the picture, see what we think. Oh man, that's awesome. We're gonna stop the exposure, relax. That was great. Wow, I love this image.
Oh my God, that's
awesome. It's simple, it's elegant.
I love it.
It's
just
just,
so city.
It says Broadway performer, and that's what you are. Thank you so much, Kimberly Dawn, for coming. This has been a real pleasure. What a great night this has been. And I can't believe everything we've created. I mean, a lot of it is experimenting. It's a lot of fun. And the more I experiment, the more I add to my creative arsenal. And I think that's what this is all about, is drawing on ideas you've created and making them better every time. Sometimes you don't get the perfect picture, but you learn from everything. And what I actually learn from the most is when I go back and I look at my edits and I look at my pictures and I just see what worked and what didn't work. So I could be here all night. Don't get me wrong, I love light painting. I want to get back and see what we created and see what we could take away from that. So thank you guys so much for joining me on this creative night. And if you ever want to join me in New York City for a nighttime photo excursion like this, I do photo walks all the time. So check out the link below and check me out at Photo Adventures. Thank you guys, and thank you Kimberly Dawn, and let's wrap it up.